There's real danger for us if we can't. If we can't face ourselves with courage, if we can't face the truth, there's danger for us. The first danger is the danger of self-deceit. 1 John chapter 1 and verse 8, John says this very succinctly. He says, if we say we have no sin, and these three words should terrify you, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. Have you ever wondered this question? How do I know whether or not I have deceived myself? Has that ever kept you up at night? What if how I think of myself is not how I really am? And maybe what if, that in a bad way, what if my self-perception is catastrophically skewed? What if I am on a path to ruin and sorrow and I don't even know it? I don't want to be self-deceived. But that's what you have. If you can't confess your sin, you will end up deceiving yourself. And you will become the kind of person where everyone around you knows more about you than you. Everyone around you sees the problem that you don't see. I'm terrified of that reality. I don't want that. I would rather be far and away my own worst critic than be self-deceived. The second danger of not confessing our sin is just sorrow and ruin. David says in Psalm 32, we could read the first 5 verses of it here. He says, blessed is the one whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man against whom the Lord counts no iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. There's that self-deceit again. Blessed is the man who can face his sin, not deceive himself, and so be forgiven by the Lord. But then David reflects on a time when he didn't do that. In verse 3, he says, when I kept silent, and this is a poetic way he describes this. I want you to see if you can resonate with what David is saying here. When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was dried up as by the heat of summer. I acknowledged my sin to you, and I did not cover my iniquity. And I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. But do you see David's reflection on what it cost him to not face the truth? He said, I was wasting away. My bones were wasting away, groaning all day long. His strength dried up. I think David is giving a profound, poetic description of something resembling depression. I don't think he's literally saying that his bones are dissolving. I think he's reflecting on, I have nothing. I think David's speaking of that hollow feeling when you get up out of bed and you don't even know why, and you're wandering around through the day just trying to get through the day, and there's no real life that you are experiencing. You're just hollow. And David says this is what comes when we can't face the truth, when we can't confess our sin. And lastly, the danger of not confessing our sin is that our hearts are hardened in it. David, after he speaks of the forgiveness that comes from God through confession, he turns then to the people of God and he gives an exhortation. Psalm 32 verse 6, he says, therefore, because God forgives sin, therefore, let everyone who is godly offer prayer to you. When? At a time when you may be found. And then he says, surely in the rush of great waters they shall not reach him. What shall not reach him? Prayer. Throughout the scriptures, there is a consistent exhortation of today, seek God. Today, while you have an opportunity to seek God, seek him. Because you don't know what tomorrow gives. And in an ultimate sense, absolutely, Christians believe there will come a day when there are no opportunities for repentance. There are no opportunities to face reality. There are no opportunities to confess sin. There will come a day, a rush of great waters, as David describes it. And in that day, confession's not a thing. There is no turning back at that point. There is a time when God may be found. And let me tell you, church, that day is today. Today is the day when God can be found. I don't know when the day is that he can't be found. The time that God can be sought and found is a finite time. There's going to come a day when you can't. And I don't know when that is. But I do know that every day that you don't face your sin and the reality of your soul and the reality of your condition and state before God, every day that you cannot face that is a day of opportunity that you've lost. And a day in which your heart is further hardened against God. Clement of Alexandria, writing early in the church, one of the church fathers, he just made this simple note in one of his letters. He said, it's good for a man to make confession of his trespasses rather than the alternative. And what's the alternative? To harden his heart. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to be in pain. It's okay to have a crisis of faith. It's okay to stumble. And by these things, I don't mean that it's like condoned by God. It's just the nature of the reality of human life. It's okay that you're not perfect. Let me tell you what's not okay is you hiding from that fact.